If you're going according to Chinese medicine, heart issues, small intestine, nervous system, insomnia, panic attacks, and memory issues. And these relate to some of the meridians that we use in acupuncture, so it goes along with that. So the limiting belief they may have when it comes to their healing might be, oh, it's okay, it'll all work out.
Cue music. Places, everybody, places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Sayler. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Now, we don't want you to worry about taking too many notes, so you can join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club, and we'll send you the transcripts and show notes from every episode. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Sayler.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And, oh my goodness, I have a great and fascinating new episode for you. I've invited Roberta Mittman back. She's a dedicated alternative healthcare practitioner, wellness coach, speaker, author, licensed acupuncturist, and certified nutritional consultant. And one of the things I wanted to talk to Roberta about, she and I were chatting the other day, and I just call her sort of our in-house wellness coach because I was chatting with her, and one of the things that fascinated me is she was mentioning about her holistic blend of the timeless Eastern principles, and she is on cutting-edge Western information, and taking the 5 elements from the Eastern principles and how they have, I'll let her explain it better, but the way I understood sort of like personality profiles to them. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. In fact, she was starting to tell me all about these topics of, you can even have in these profiles limiting beliefs that keep you stuck, that don't, that keep you at a certain place in wellness. I'm like, wow, Roberta, we got to talk about that. So welcome back to the show, Roberta. Thanks for being on.
Oh, Sharon, I'm always so delighted. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you.
And I want to pick up a little bit where we left off, but I want everybody to be in on the conversation, not feel like they came in halfway through. First off, share with them better than I did about this concept of the Eastern principles having personality profiles.
Right. It's really one of the most fascinating parts of Chinese medicine, along with, of course, there's acupuncture, which is totally fascinating and that I love. There is, in Chinese medicine, a way to describe the universe. Things are broken down in a very elegant way. And there are 5 elements: water, wood, metal, fire, and earth. And they form different patterns of wellness and harmony, and as well as disharmony in the world, which you'll all see as we start to describe it. And in acupuncture, when we treat somebody for a particular condition, we would say, oh, let's say they're stressed. Well, that's their liver, which is the wood element. So we would treat something on the wood element to bring it back into harmony. It's all about the smooth flow of energy. And that's what we're looking for. And these 5 elements relate to so many things in the universe, but as they relate to people, you can actually find them as almost like I like to say archetypes. They're a way for you, me, everyone to see, well, maybe they can see themselves in there and get an idea of what could be out of balance, what could be in balance, and what a limiting belief could be about their ability to move forward in the world. And in this particular case, to move forward in healing, and I'm going to use it especially with people who have long-standing health challenges.
Oh.
And it's my belief that there are certain sabotaging, limiting beliefs that were actually put in place before the age of 7. Their survival skills, safety skills that have become imprinted and are still there, operating, like I like to say, in the desktop, in our mind, without our even knowing it.
Absolutely. One thing I've noticed, though, it was fascinating to me about when you said before the age of 7, how many things that we don't even know we're doing until someone like a wellness coach or a good friend points out and said, how's that working for you, kind of thing. It's fascinating to me that a lot of times we don't even know we're doing those behaviors.
It's very difficult to know that we're doing a specific behavior because it's subconscious. It's so deeply imprinted for so long, and we live in our own head. So it's very hard to identify them ourselves unless maybe you'll read something and it'll sound familiar and say, oh, well, maybe I am like that. What could I do to make a difference in that and not react that same way all the time? So that's what this is all about, to change people's reaction, therefore to change the stress that it causes needlessly. And the stress, as you know, is so damaging to one's body, especially when you're trying to heal from an autoimmune condition.
Right. And you've got your own stresses in the healing, but now you're adding on everything that's happened to us in 2020, what I'll call external stressors, that I think it's making it even harder to stay optimizing every day because of all the external stresses. But I want to circle back because I have a question about the elements. And you said like wood and your liver go together. So are we all a makeup of the 5 elements? I mean, we've got little bits, so I'm a little confused. So you wouldn't just say, oh, Sharon is wood. It doesn't sound like that. It's more like your liver connects to the wood element. And so would another organ connect to another element?
That's a really good question. Excellent. I'm so glad you asked that. The short answer is we have all of the elements within us. It's a holistic blend. And they all go and nurture each other, or they actually kind of antagonize each other. It's an interesting way that they support each other or they don't. Like if you're one particular type, you could be very easily triggered by another type, as you'll see, because I'm going to go over some of these for you and just kind of map them out a little bit. And you'll see, like, sometimes you could be triggered by another element, but another element could be very nurturing. But to answer your question, we have them all. Sometimes we have a primary one that sort of like stands out in front. And you can say, that sounds like me. And then you can have a secondary one. And then you could have one at the very bottom, which maybe just hardly represented, but it's all there. And just to clarify what you asked me about the liver, each element is made of 2 meridian systems, organs. So the wood, which is really, it's a little bit more complex, but the wood is made out of the liver and gallbladder meridians and organs. And they actually work together and form the wood element. So in acupuncture, we would treat the liver meridian, but we're also treating wood. So it's for the purposes of this particular conversation, I think it's easier if we just stay in the elements and not in the meridians and the organs that make them up.
Absolutely. I was just a little confused there whether I would be like one element or if I could be more than one element. And it sounds
all of them.
Sounds like it's
yes.
Like all of them.
All of them.
Some people have a primary.
Most people have a primary and a secondary. And the other ones could be represented in a very small way, or they could be almost equally balanced throughout. It's interesting how that could happen, where the people might have like a block of each. but I see most people seem to have one or two that stand out. And with that come those beliefs that could be like blocking fulfillment, joy, health, and the road forward.
Wow, this is fascinating. How does one find out what one is?
Well, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help everyone a little bit today.
Oh, okay.
And just give you, and then I'm happy to work with people. There is so much you could read about it. There are so many wonderful books about it. It's on the internet about the personality types of the elements.
This is fascinating. I've never thought of this concept of, I've always understood these Eastern principles of the different elements, but I didn't realize they had personalities behind them. Can you share with us a couple of things like what you mean when we were talking about them having personalities? Is it sort of like you tend to be stubborn or something like that?
So here's what I thought I would do. So I kind of prepared a little bit of a little potpourri of each element. And I was going to just introduce people to what that is, what some of the characteristics are, and then you can decide, hey, that sort of sounds like me. I think this could be my primary one. And then what's really important is to see what is that element like when it's in balance, and what is it like when it's out of balance. Because when it's out of balance, we want to make corrective measures or re-script the thoughts that are making it go out of balance so that it can be more harmonious and have a smooth flow of energy.
Oh, sounds fantastic. Yeah, let's jump in.
Okay.
What's your first one?
The first one is water. And we're going to call the water like the dreamer, the philosopher. So I like to think of water as just flowing. And if it's going down the river and you seize a rock, well, it'll just flow around it. And it'll just be, sometimes it's a raging river, sometimes it's a lovely little brook, but it's a person who has the water element as a primary, let's just say, is really into the flow of things. That person's an innovator, a creative thinker, and needs quiet time and peacefulness. And that person needs to be, not to do. They tend to be a little detached. They need safety. They can withdraw and shut down in certain situations and be an introvert. They obsess about death and sickness. And they're hard to read sometimes. They're a little bit of an enigma. But basically, they sit back and they listen. And they're just accessing their intuitive wisdom. The one thing is that they feel different. They feel that people don't get them. And they feel a little bit isolated and detached, either because they feel that people don't get them or because they tend to be more of a loner kind of a person and withdrawn and private. So that kind of person would describe the water. It's very like an innovative, creative person. And they just lack trust, and they have a fear of abandonment, and they just have a deeper knowing about things, about everyday things. They'll give it a lot of inner meaning. I'm sorry about the sirens here in New York City. And they feel also that they notice when they feel stressed, and they feel like that you can't help me. I'm in this by myself. And that's one of their limiting beliefs. I'm in this alone. You can't help me. It's hopeless. It'll never get better. So if you get the idea of that type of a profile, it's a quiet, introspective, deep thinker. So that's our water element. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, no. Yeah, now I'm really getting to understand it at a deeper level. part of it, when I heard that, I imagine as we hear the other four, people will begin to go, oh, well, part of me sounds like there were parts of that water that sounded a little bit like me. So I'm curious to hear the other four. Let's dive into what is the next.
But can I just mention one other quick thing about the water?
Yeah.
And I could go through them a little faster too. And that the water element, if it's out of balance, will usually, but not strictly, have to do with kidneys, ears, lower back pain, circulation, the brain, bones, teeth, reproductive organs, and hormones.
Wow.
So that can be part of that disharmony, but not has to be, but I'm just saying it could be. And things to do would be to listen to music, have rest time to make sure every day that you give yourself that peace. Meditation, swimming, all of those things would be helpful for the water element. So the next one, I think we might all recognize a little bit. It's wood. And wood is the warrior. And this wood profile, the person in there is focusing on doing. The wood person is driven, impatient to move forward. Like in New York, that'd be the person saying, you're going too slow, get out of my way, Is competitive. They're a workaholic. They seek solutions when others give up. There's no fear of uncharted territory. It's like, oh, that's scary. That's a scary ride. Oh, I'm on it. I'm going for it. They like action and speed, competition. And they like challenges, adventures. They keep things moving. And they like to control the situation. They get things done. They're efficient. They navigate challenges, and they envision the path ahead. So picture like a little sprout coming through the earth when it's first like starting to thaw out a little bit. That is going to get through no matter what. And if there's a crack, let's say somewhere, it's going to find its way and come out through the crack. It's just very determined, and it's just on a journey, and I'm in it and I'm going to handle it. I've got this. And so
sounds somewhat opposite of water in a bit.
Oh, it totally is.
That are very different from water.
So that's a good point, because if you were a wood person and you met a water person, and I'm talking very slowly and quietly, thinking about the deeper meaning of life, a wood person would have no patience for that. They would not be good marital partners, let's put it that way, because the wood person would have no patience for that at all. And the water person would feel like very insulted and brushed off.
Wow.
Interesting, right? So for the wood person, they can be angry, pushy and angry. And they need regular breaks and rest too. They direct people to do it their way. They don't ask for favors. They demand, like, this is how I want it to be done. I don't want to waste time. You have to do it this way, my way or the highway, right? And they're all work and no play. So they need to lighten up because their system will crash, and to develop a stronger sense of their inner self, to be curious and look within. So in my practice, I would say that many people come in and they have much of this type of disharmony. This is where you feel somebody's coming in and they're stressed. They're just like pushing ahead. You see this in New York City a lot. Everyone's in a hurry. Everyone's stressed. Move out of my way. Let's get this done. And you can see where that's going to eventually burn out. So what happens with that is sometimes seen in liver, gallbladder, eye issues, acid reflux, GERD, your jaw, headaches, and migraines. And so they like rarely ask for help, and they don't really only reference themselves when it comes to issues. So their belief would be, this is not good enough. This will not do. I must do it. There's no protection, and I've got this. Nobody else can take care of this or take charge of this or handle this except for me. So
I know a couple of those people come to mind.
I know. It's really true. So, that's where that liver meridian is that we were talking about, right? The one that gets the most stressed. And that's in acupuncture what we treat so much of the time, especially right now in 2020.
We need to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to know, are we born this way, or do we develop it just from our life, living our life and the cultures we're in? So we'll be right back after this quick commercial break, because I'm so curious how flexible, how changeable is this? So we'll be right back, and we'll cover the other 3 elements too. We'll be right back.
Life Interrupted Radio will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com to learn more.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living. A chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me, and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Sharon, and of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star Reader's Favorite review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PinkyChenille.com. See you there. Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com, and tonight I'm here with healthcare practitioner, author, licensed acupuncturist, and certified nutritional consultant Roberta Mittman. She's the owner of Park Avenue Center for Wellbeing, and tonight we're talking about the different Eastern principles, the 5 personality types, I guess I could want to call them. Roberta, what exactly do we call them? We're talking about the elements, but is there like a bigger title to these things? Is it just the 5 elements?
They're called the 5 phases, technically. The 5 phases of traditional Chinese medicine.
Are we born with one, or are they just a accumulation of our life?
That's so great that you ask that. So I'm going to say, to answer your question, that these are things that are probably things that we were somewhat born to do, maybe have a predisposition, but many of these characteristics, in my opinion, are put into place as children. And these are like things that happen to us with our experience, as I said, much before the age of 7, and they sort of make a template on where to develop from there. Just learn how to handle all kinds of different situations. And yes,
Okay.
they can be. Yes, they can be, but the issue is, as you know, it's how do we become aware of when something's in disharmony? That's the issue, because it's very hard for us. Like, can you tell, like, you know, if that's inside of you, let's just say that it's out of balance? It's really hard, right?
It's really hard because maybe part of me, I'm thinking water. You said the words like introvert and stuff. Maybe that person does like to just sit there and read, or it's doing some other introvert things alone, recharging their batteries alone. Or I'm thinking maybe the wood person reminds them of a family member who they've cut off all contact. So I mean, it's fascinating, all these things that play in together. That some of the things that you've mentioned, if I had that personality trait, I'm thinking, I'm not sure I'd want to change that anyway, even if I knew that.
Well, but yes, the issue is these are wonderful traits. These are when it's in balance. But when it's out of balance, what happens is, for instance, the water will feel like abandoned, and they can't trust anybody. And they have to, it's very difficult. It's like where they feel like their needs for safety are not met. And they feel very vulnerable and uncomfortable. So that's when it's in a stressed state that it's wonderful to be able to know what they are when it's in a stressed state, and be able to actually rescript it and reframe it. Because once you become aware of it, of stress, there is a way to come to a different realization and start to look at it in a different way and change the way of reacting.
Okay, now it's starting to come together. So I want to make sure we have time for all 5. I don't want to leave people hanging. Gosh, you only said 2. So let's jump in. Well, what's number 3?
3 is fire. Fire is, oh my goodness, fire is the fun-loving person. They can go from like embers or to a flaming fire, but they're moving around, they're scattered, they're fun, they love stimulation, they constantly seek excitement, charisma, optimism, deepening connections, idealistic. They just like are vitality, but they have a roller coaster of feelings, sometimes unstable. They can be all over the place. But you know, they're just like the playfulness. They're the kind of person that's optimistic and brings like the light of they're the light of the party. You know what I mean? It's just fun to be with. And those people could have, if you're going according to Chinese medicine, heart issues, small intestine, nervous system, insomnia, panic attacks, and memory issues. And these relate to some of the meridians that we use in acupuncture. So it goes along with that. So the limiting belief that they may have when it comes to their healing might be, oh, it's okay. It'll all work out. I don't need a plan. Or it's out of control. And I can't, it's like black or white. It's like in denial, like, oh, it's okay. I don't need to do anything. It'll work out. Or it's totally out of control and I don't know what to do. So it's kind of a little bit of both of those, but that's the life of the party and a fun-loving friend to have, unless they get out of boundaries and out of balance. And they're like, they need boundaries and they're overly empathetic. So those are your empaths.
Really?
And they're going to get burned out and fear rejection.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting that they would be empathic. Fascinating.
Yeah.
The next one.
Yeah. The next one is Earth. And then Earth is our caregiver. That's the mother. That's the one that's going to nurture us. It's going to put everybody ahead of them, all their needs, and when it's out of balance, it's a doormat, somebody that walks over. And they can't say no. They have really poor boundaries, and they have no me time left, and they're just worn out. And they just get too involved in other people's issues. They feel guilty to ask for anything for themselves. And there's a potential for have codependent traits if it's in excess, but they always let everybody go first. So we all know people like that they're just very, can't stand up for themselves, but are so giving, over giving. And those people, we have stomach and digestion and eating issues for Earth.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Nourishment and digestion and chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and muscles. Kind of interesting, but that's part of that element that could be covered in there.
Well, since we've covered 4 right now, I'm thinking to myself, it's starting to make sense, like why someone feel like they had stomach issues. I'm starting to put together people in my mind who that sounds like my friend or my acquaintance so-and-so. And this is so fascinating because I'm like, yeah, that's right. They do have migraines, or yeah, that's right. They do have stomach issues.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And also the Earth also represents a time of planting things, and, there's seasons that correspond to these, and colors that correspond to these elements. And as I said, emotions and climates. I mean, there's so much in nature that correspond to these elements. I've just kind of taken them out, and we're looking at the personality, emotional component of them. But there are so many things. There's a sound that goes with it. There's, as I mentioned, color. There's just so many different characteristics that go with these elements as well. So they would say, what about me? My needs won't be met. So that might be their limiting belief. And the last one that we have, and then we can ask you what you think yours could be. The last one is metal. And they could be like the artist. They are into perfection, beauty, details, rules, structure. There's only one way to do this. And they have an inner critic that's so active that they're thinking I could be doing this wrong. A fear of failure, because they have this perfectionistic tendency. They can be aloof. They can be just very, I like to say, dogmatically positioned. It's it's just got to be this way, according to the plan. And they get very upset if it doesn't go according to the plan. So they're dependent on that. It's order, form, and structure. And that's what gives them safety as well. The organs that might be out of balance would be lungs, large intestine, skin, a depleted immune system, allergies, environmental sensitivities, and autoimmune. Interesting, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. Yes.
That's fascinating. I'm not sure if anybody's ever done a study. Are more metal people have autoimmune? I mean,
I don't
interesting
know,
to
but
me.
that just might be their bodies. It's kind of that could be that perfectionist tendency, and it has to be just a certain way. Otherwise, there's a lot of anxiety and grief. And so the lung meridian, which really has so much to do with your immunity, is part of the metal element. So a lot of the autoimmune would probably come from the fact that the lung meridian is there, and that is responsible for the barrier, between you and the world, other than your skin.
This is fascinating. I'm seeing bits of myself in all of that.
Right.
Unfortunately, as I'm there are tendencies for all of that. And what I'm finding fascinating too is, in all 5 of them, you've brought up the concept of their version of safety.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that, as you know, we've had Sarah Payton on several times too, and she talks a lot about trauma and the need for safety.
Yes.
And I'm curious, as a wellness coach, or let's say you're a caregiver or someone, and you notice that someone is one of these elements during our chat here, is it helpful for you to be understanding of that and provide, is it sort of like love languages in a way, that you provide the safety that their
Absolutely.
element is kind of like saying that they are needing?
Absolutely. 100%. That is so insightful, Sharon, as you always are. Exactly. Because what happens is when somebody gets stressed, that's when a lot of these things are triggered. And what happens, what kicks in, is our need for safety. And it takes various forms. And, we act out in a certain way, or something triggers us, but it's all our body's designed to have our body have this homeostasis to keep us safe. And without safety, there's stress, and it wears down your body even more.
Absolutely.
That was very
and the fascinating thing to me is I'm reflecting back on what Sarah Payton shares with us in some of her interviews, and I see so many tight connections here.
Yes.
And one of them is Sarah talks about the need for safety as well, similar to you. And then her other comment is, once we feel safe, we want to know that we matter. And as the partner or the caregiver, or even ourselves, maybe there's a bit of self-love and telling ourselves we matter would be critically important here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's definitely a belief that it could be from like nobody gets me to I'm not good enough, which would be the middle. It's not good enough. I'm not good enough. Nothing's good enough. So that would be from the middle perspective. So yeah, that you matter and you've been seen, you've been heard. Absolutely.
Now, we need to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I want to talk to Roberta some more about this, because I'm fascinated about the idea of when we meet some of these unspoken needs, how our wellness can change, how our well-being can change. So we'll be right back.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life, and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Research shows we apologize up to 10 times a day, and most of the time, we say sorry as a response to someone else's mistake. What if we thanked people instead of all that unnecessary apologizing? So instead of saying, sorry, I'm rambling, you say, thank you for listening. Join us at projectforgive.com, a free, non-religious resource on global forgiveness.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And I'm just so fascinated. My mind is going 140 different directions at once. This idea of the Eastern principles and the Eastern elements, and how they not only play into the meridians and the wellness of our body, but the spiritual, the mental, emotional wellness of our body as well. And this is so fascinating to me. Have you noticed in your practice, Roberta, as you put into play, like, okay, this one is number one is, we'll say something like water, and then how about wood or something? I don't know if those are kind of opposed.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I have a particular technique that I use, and it uses muscle testing, but it really helps to identify where somebody is in terms of what they're thinking, what their emotion is, and where it came from, and how it's affecting them, and how we can re-script it. I use this all the time. I don't necessarily talk to somebody and say, "Oh, you're really like so wood." I don't really talk to them about that. I talk to them more about the emotions that they are exhibiting. I think that's really, more important. But a lot of people enjoy talking about the different profiles too, the elements.
I'm fascinated by the element profiles, but you're right. If, you're so wood, I think the majority of people are, huh? So,
yes, but
absolutely.
But angry and irritable and like pushing ahead and like very forceful, like a real take charge person, that people would understand that a little bit more. So I tend to do that. But yes, I use this every day because I'm a firm believer in finding the emotional component that lies behind everything. For the physical, sometimes it is, it's strictly physical, but sometimes the way somebody deals with it and their reaction to something that they're dealing with or struggling with has as much, and the way it's stressing them out has a lot to do with their recovery and what makes it go along a little bit faster and smoother.
Well, that's fascinating to me, because what I'm thinking is, if I knew about these were my tendencies, and then someone else would say something like, people with these tendencies sometimes find it helpful too, and someone's giving me other ways to think about it. Because one thing I've noticed lately, and I'm not going to delve too deeply into politics here, but one thing I've noticed with a certain larger group of acquaintances, that a lot of them are entrenched and firmly believe what they believe, and the other side is like, I can't believe they believe that, but they're firmly entrenched in their can't believe that someone else believes that kind of belief. So what are some tricks that you have for us to uncover these things that are keeping us stuck and keeping us? One of my things that it took me a while to break through, I knew I was doing it, but it took someone else pointing out how to get out of it. And that was this idea of, okay, it's pretty good here. Like you get a certain level of wellness, and maybe you're not perfect, but you don't want to slide back. And so you're like happy with the status quo type of thing. Okay, it's pretty good here. I'll stay here. And it took me a while, and it took someone else to point out the idea of, I think you're stuck.
Right. Oh, good point. Yeah. You're asking me, how can you do this, or what can one do once you find it? I'm not exactly
absolutely running down a rabbit hole, everyone, here, because I'm fascinated about this idea of getting stuck in our own beliefs and how someone else can gently nudge someone out. Because I'm noticing, just with the high anxiety and everything, just looking at someone and saying, you believe that?
Yeah, right.
Doesn't work.
Right. Well, there's also like, people have these very like deep underlying beliefs, like, you can't think that, that's wrong. Or wait a minute, there's just so many different things. And how can you figure out, based on your element, how you're going to react to that? Because each element's going to have a different reaction to somebody who's saying something that they don't agree with. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So,
like the fire person would be like, oh, well, that doesn't matter. We could change. It doesn't, let's just keep it light and fun. And then the water person would think, well, let's think about this. And the wood person would go, how could they think that? No, absolutely. They can't think that, so it's a very, it's just a very interesting way But the issue is the underlying issues change the inner compass that we all have. And when they become imbalanced, and when they become, even like you said, stuck or stagnant, then they're just going to there's not going to be any forward movement or growth or development. And it's very hard for people to know that themselves. So, I mean, sometimes what I like to do is just like, to have a session with people, and we'll just talk about the elements. And I actually can give them like a little quiz, and they can take it and they can see, which element they are. Somebody could, write me and ask me, and I'm very happy to, share that. And there's a lot of different ways to find out. And then sometimes it needs a little help to find out what you can do to change it once you've kind of identified and discovered them.
Are you always the same element, but even if things in your life change, or can that element change based on life circumstances? Maybe your life's going along swimmingly, whatever, and then all of a sudden something happens. Would these elements possibilities change?
You ask the best questions, and honestly, I personally don't think so. I think that they can be more harmonious, and they can be help somebody to become more accepting of, in a positive way. I'm not saying that in a negative way, of reality perhaps, and dealing with it in a good way. So I think that what you can fine tune these, but I personally believe that they're a little foundational. And once they're in place, I have a feeling that they're pretty much there to stay. But I don't think it's a sentence, because we all have there's so many positive qualities to these elements, and we have all of them within. So I don't, want somebody to think it's going to be 100% one and 0% of something, because it's never like that.
And the other thing that I was thinking about, especially with the limiting beliefs part of this, is that it's perfectly okay to accept all of the good parts of it and still go, maybe I am a little judgmental, or maybe I am this or that. And being okay with it, but still wanting to change it. Still say, maybe I'll dip my toe in the water and see what happens if I don't make a snap judgment the next time I'm out in public.
Exactly. I think that's a really, wise way to look at it. And even in terms of healing, like, one element may be so impatient. They're like, come on, we're wasting time. But sometimes the course of healing takes time. And sometimes somebody in the water element will be, well, I got to really think this. I got to think this over. And like, so much has gone on by the time they come to a conclusion that they could have, they might have like kind of didn't seize a certain opportunity that might have been presented because they're overthinking. So there's just a lot of ways that, these can be utilized so that people's health is just being as I said, harmonious, and people are vital, and they're not staying stuck, and they're moving in a direction that's right for them.
And a part of me keeps going, it sounds almost like you should do this as a couple.
I know. We find out our love element. Yeah. Well, they do have certain things, like you could actually look on the, when you read about these profiles, it's like what to do if your partner is a wood and you're a whatever. Like, how can you, make this a very compatible arrangement by looking at the part that makes the wood and kind of like taming it down, and the other one to add a little bit more spark with certain activities, lighting candles, listening to music, going outside, exercising. There's tons of different things.
This is fascinating to me.
I'm so glad.
Well, I'm a firm believer, Roberta, as you know, because we've talked about this multiple times, that when someone has a long-term condition, and it doesn't have to be just autoimmune, but when someone has a long-term condition, it's really helpful and beneficial to explore all of you, not just the physical. Like a lot of Western medicine, it's all about the physical, yet oftentimes when I've uncovered past traumas, all of a sudden I'll have a leap in my wellness. And it's very wonderful to know that. And it's always, regardless that it's happened numerous times in my 7-year healing journey here, it's still always surprising. Like, oh, well, gosh, I didn't know that was there. I work on it. I get through it. Whatever it is that I deal with. And that's part of my personality, is being very open to that. I might resist it for a little while, but once I realize it's hampering me, I have to push forward. But this part of it has me fascinated, is being able to know that different meridians, different organs, if you're having specific problems with your organs, say you know that your gastrointestinal system is off, is that another pointer from an opposite direction? One of the elements, I'm forgetting which one is the stomach element.
That's Earth.
Earth. Thank you. So if someone says, I don't know if I'm totally Earth, but there's a lot of gastro types of problems, maybe I should look deeper into the Earth profile. Is that a good way for us to know as well?
Yes, one could. But if somebody came into my office, let's say, and they had some, stomach and digestive issues, I would look at some of the emotions of Earth, but I would, if they came in for acupuncture, I'd also be treating the stomach and spleen meridians, which include those which have to do with the Earth element. You can look at it there's certain foods that go along with the elements, certain ideal foods to balance it out, which I didn't mention. Oh. Yeah, so they can make dietary.
Yeah, give me an example. What is a common food that people might go, oh, wow, I had no idea that would balance it out?
Let's stick with the Earth element. The Earth element has to do a lot of times to do with eating, overeating. That would be a way to, like, the Earth element might be out of balance. So eating things that are sugary and heavy, obvious, right? But, right. One thing that's really interesting is that they say to never drink iced cold drinks or like ice cream and things like that, because it puts out the digestive fire. So eating warm things, foods, like at least room temperature would be the ideal, and to try and stay away, for the most part, from very cold things, because they're very contracting, and that would help your Earth element.
Well, this is just so fascinating. I know we could go so much deeper. We're just down to the 3 minutes here, Roberta. Time flies when we're together. I just love exploring all of these interesting ways to look at wellness. I'm all about looking at it multiple ways, because I've always been pleasantly surprised. I'm like, wow, that's a fascinating thing. And then all of a sudden my health will optimize. So anyway, tell us more about how to get a hold of you and how we can learn more about this.
Oh, thank you. Well, the best way, I think, would be to come to my website at robertamittman.com, Mittman, or I'm on Facebook, on social media, and things like that. And I'm very happy to work with anybody who would like to learn a little bit more about it and who's curious. So I think that would be the best way.
Oh, absolutely. And besides doing this, especially during this pandemic time, you're also doing a lot of virtual or video teleconferencing, wellness coaching, right?
Oh, yes. And I'll always include some of this as well, the emotional component. But I'm also doing a lot of health and wellness coaching these days, and I love it. It's just really working out beautifully. So thank you for mentioning that. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, Roberta, that I love too, I just want to throw this out, everyone, because Roberta works a lot with, shall I say, women of a certain age.
I do. That's correct.
And all of this knowledge really plays into it, and being able to, look back over a lifetime of it all and understand how our life changes as we age as well. So that's another one of Roberta's great talents, is understanding, I'll just gently say, women of a certain age and how we can optimize our health every day. Roberta, thanks so much for being on and talking about the Eastern principles. I just find all of this fascinating, and all of these principles, not just Eastern, but Western and any other principles I find, adding them into your wellness knowledge and taking the ones that work for you and letting the others go. And that's the whole thing, is keep on optimizing every day to continue to improve your health. And that's the way to become a thriver. Everyone, have a great week, whatever your adventures. Join me next week for another brand new episode. Enjoy.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any other recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio.
Hi, this is Sharon, and of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star Reader's Favorite review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PINKYCHENILLE.com. See you there.